Guys, I am back. I'm excited to be back, and I know I have filmed a book haul recently, so technically this is my second video being back, but it's official. I'm back. I have taken a break from YouTube. I talked about it a little bit in my book haul. I was burning out a little bit. I was not seeing the goals I wanted to see in my reading, in my booktube life, booktube career, if you want to put it that way. Not seeing the growth that mattered to me, and not seeing the community building like I would like it to. And my dog is wanting it in. All right, say hi to Drake. Oh, he's gonna wander off and mess with the tripod probably. Anyway, so I was not seeing the growth that I wanted to see with my channel. I was not seeing any of the goals that I wanted to meet at the beginning of the year being met. And so I was struggling, having a little bit of burnout. And I used the excuse of Veilguard to kind of walk away. And I really just needed a break. My brain has reset. It has wandered into the realm of horror as opposed to fantasy lately, and I'm not opposed to it. But I am very excited to get back to what I enjoy reading. I do love horror. It is my first love. It is my comfort zone, and that's probably why I've gone back to it for the month of December. You'll see that whenever I do my December wrap up. And you'll probably see that carry out through 2025. Though this video is about the 25 books I want to read in 2025. I am excited to talk through these books with you guys. I am excited to delve into them next year. I set these goals and immediately wanted to start them. So just very much looking forward to this. Now, one thing I did with my 25 books I want to read in 2025, I did not allow myself to put books on here that I knew I was already going to be reading, such as Onyx Storm, such as the next book in Engines of Empires, that series. I didn't put anything like that on here. Now, I have built up my TBR cart for 2025 as well. You will see that this will reflect some of my goals for the year. Finishing out series, I've got a couple on here. This one I definitely need to finish. I've put it off and put it off because I don't want it to end. But, you know, I left those off of the list because those are givens. These are the 25 books I really want to read in 2025. Now, something you might also not see on this list very much is self-pub. I'm not walking away from self-pub. However, I have a tendency to do them via audio. I'm trying to get the physical books off of my shelves that I no longer want anymore, because also in 2025, I will be redoing my library. We are moving it from this room into our dining room and making this room a guest bedroom. There's reasons for all of this. We will be remodeling, revamping our house because our mother-in-law moved in with us this year, and we decided collectively that with the sale of her house, we will be renovating this house to accommodate all of us and make it livable for all of us. That does mean putting in a guest room because my nieces have a tendency to stay the night. If you guys have watched my vlogs, you will have seen them quite often, and we want a room for them. So that is my long explanation of why these 25 books have made my list, what goals have changed, and all of that stuff. I'm going to start with the paperbacks that I have. I have a stack over here. And the first on that list is one I really thought I would get to in 2024, and I just didn't. Mainly because of when it came out and my burnout that happened with BookTube and with reading. But The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. Now, I had heard that there was a heist in this, which is the main reason that I picked it up. In reading the synopsis, I don't get much of a heist vibe. So guys, tell me if I'm right or wrong in the comments, because that's the reason I picked this up. However, it is dark fantasy. It's dark humor as well, which I absolutely love. It's been compared to Scott Lynch, Nicholas Eames, and Joe Abercrombie. That makes me excited because even though First Law is not a series that I loved the first book. When It Went Nowhere is what got me. Now, I've heard this is plot heavy. There's revenge and stuff going on in this. That always makes me very excited. We have a card sharp as our main character, so that excites me as well. I love thieves, assassins, rogues of any kind. And that is what is drawing me to this. Now, another thing that I am trying to accomplish with this list is buzzwords. I don't know where I got away from my buzzwords in 2024. Something happened and I read a lot of books that I didn't intend to read. I didn't read books that I had intended to read. And so this is kind of top of my list for 2025. Again, with buzzwords and books I've had on my shelves for longer than I should. Behind the Throne by KB Wagers. Now, the one thing that gets me about this book, and I'm going to read it to you. Behind the Throne begins an action-packed new series with a heroine as rebellious as Han Solo, as savvy as Leia, and as skilled as Rey. Now, making those comparisons, I'm just, okay, I'm sold. I'm sold. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And every time I see an excerpt by KB Wagers, I'm like, I really need to read KB because they sound like they're going to be completely up my alley. And I happen to know that KB Wagers is a Horizon Zero Dawn fan. Don't ask me how I know. But I am also a Horizon Zero Dawn fan. Not that it's going to play into this, but I do feel like this is going to pull from Star Wars and it's going to be sassy and it's going to be funny and it's going to be a romp, an adventure, and I'm going to love it. So I really need to get back to stuff like that as well. Next is another that I'm so excited to get to. I have my doubts on whether or not this is going to be like a 5-star read for me or not, but it does have some buzzwords for me, and that is The Rook by Danielle O'Malley, Her Majesty's Supernatural Secret Service. Now, if you guys know, I did not like Her Majesty's Royal Coven for many reasons, many reasons. And I've heard that this is very similar, and it eradicates the parts of Her Majesty's Royal Coven that I didn't like, including writing style, because writing style is always going to be kind of number one for me. Plot and writing style, they kind of go hand in hand in my enjoyment of a book, but writing style will be the definitive factor every time. And I did not like the writing style for Her Majesty's Royal Coven. Now, this has a similar premise, and so I'm very excited to see if this works for me more because there are buzzwords, including the rook being one of them. Conniving and engrossing. Conniving is always going to get me. We just talked about rogue characters, but the opening line of the synopsis. My Fonnie Thomas awakes in a London park surrounded by dead bodies. With her memory gone, she must trust the instructions left by a former self in order to survive. Now, I'm not a fan of amnesia tropes, but I do like whenever our character left notes for themselves. Like, it's still our character's thoughts, our character's feelings, our character's decision making that is pushing the story forward, even though they themselves have amnesia. And so I can get behind that type of amnesia trope. But forgetting everything and walking away and not realizing the things that they've done or the things other people have done or having this revelation and their memory come back, like those things bug me. But I know someone who that trope bothers and loved this book. So I'm very excited for this. And one that I recently picked up at the buy sell trade. This has so many buzzwords. Deliciously dark, a fairy tale retelling, and gothic. The Shadow in the Glass by J.J. Harwood. I don't know why I keep trying to put a D in there. Harwood. I love a gothic fairy tale retelling. I love grim fairy tales anyways, and so when someone takes a fairy tale that we know and love very well and puts a dark twist on it, I'm always gonna like it. I'm always gonna like it. It's gonna suck me in and I'm gonna eat it up. And this is Cinderella. So we all know that Cinderella is a very heart-wrenching story to begin with, and putting a dark twist on it, I'm just excited to see where this goes. So this one, I have a little bit of explaining to do because I have loved and hated Martha Wells in the past. And so I picked up City of Bones at the buy-sell trade just so I could try it. I love Murderbot. I have a tendency to want to read Murderbot when I need to shut my brain off though, so it's not one of those that I'm so engrossed in the story or anything like that. I just love how Murderbot is. And so I love that they kind of just don't want to deal with life. And let's be real, don't we all sometimes? And so I kind of read those as a brain off, enjoy the ride type of read. Now, I read Witch King and I hated it. It was the writing style that didn't work for me. It was the exposition that didn't work for me. And I've heard very good things about City of Bones though, and I want to give Martha Wells another try, something outside of Murderbot, to see if I actually like her writing outside of that series of novellas. Okay, and you'll see this crop up when I start doing my series reads, doing my series updates, all of that stuff, because this is a series I meant to try years and years ago whenever it was self-published, and I never did, and I don't know why, other than to say, there were certain buzzwords that I was anticipating and certain anti-buzzwords in this series. And so I kind of just didn't want to start it and hate it. But The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin, I know that this is very much compared to Red Rising. I know that we have an academy at the heart of this, and I thought I was not going to like the martial arts aspect of this story. However, I read The Art of Prophecy last year and loved it, and it's very centered around martial arts. So I'm very intrigued by this now, and I have a renewed want to read this series. And so this will come up in my series that I want to tackle in 2025. And I do have the first two books kind of awaiting a paperback of the third, but I really love a fun, rompy sci-fi, and that sounds like this is what it's going to be. And sci-fantasy is always going to be very high on my list. Again, I love Star Wars, and so anything that is sci-fantasy is going to immediately have my attention just for being in that subcategory of sci-fi and fantasy. So very, very excited for this series. Okay, another TBR vet that I feel like I'm going to enjoy. I've recently seen a couple of people review this, and I was like, why have I been sleeping on that? But that would be Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. I've had this for a very, very long time. This is like a sci-fi thriller that centers around virtual reality. And while I read Ready Player One, I read a couple of books that center around that. I've enjoyed them. They've never been favorites, but I've heard that Neal Stephenson's writing style is going to be something that I enjoy, and it's going to be a little bit more intricate. It's going to be a little bit more flowery, I guess, for lack of a better word, because I don't really associate sci-fi and flowery unless we're talking about Essa Hansen. But I'm very excited to get into this. And like I said, I've had it on my shelves for years. And it's one that I feel like if I don't read, I'm going to have to unhaul it at some point, but I don't want to. And that makes me lean towards reading it this year as opposed to like getting rid of it at any time in the near future. This next one, I don't think really needs any explanation from me other than the fact that it's Megan E. O'Keefe. I love Megan E. O'Keefe. I have loved the Protectorate series. I have loved The Blighted Stars. I can't remember the name of that series. They're way over there and I can't see them. Megan E. O'Keefe is an author that I absolutely love. And so I'm very excited to pick up a fantasy novel by them. And if I remember correctly, this is sci-fantasy because I don't feel like Megan E. O'Keefe can just walk away from sci-fi, but this is also one of the first books that she wrote, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. And she's an auto-buy author for me. I'm going to read everything that she writes. This is a backlist book, backlist series. And I do know a couple of my friends have DNF'd it. So I wonder why, but I don't want to be spoiled for anything. And I love the way that she does incredibly twisty plots. And I get that that's not for everyone. So that could be why they DNF'd, but it could also be a reason that I'm absolutely going to love it. Now, I have a really bad habit of buying series that I haven't read the first book, and sometimes I get so intrigued by an author that I buy everything they've written without any forethought whatsoever. And you guys know about David Dalglish. I have actually read 2 books of a series that I need to read the third. That's going to be one that I try to finish in 2025. But Stephen Arion is another one that I just keep buying the books and I haven't read a single one of them. Now, Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads is the one who turned me on to this author, and him and Leslie are both quoted in this book, on this book somewhere. And I love historical fantasy. It's not something that I read very often, but I'm very excited about this one because I've only heard good things. Now, do I own his entire backlist? Yes, I do. I haven't heard the greatest things about the backlist lately, but I'm still very intrigued by this author. And I do think this has the best shot of being a favorite book of mine. It has the best shot of being a 5-star. And so I want to go ahead and tackle this one. I know I might be setting myself up for failure in reading the best first, but that will also give me a reason to either read or unhaul the rest of his stuff. And a goal of mine, I do need to kind of dwindle down the books that are going to be moving to the dining room because I'm going to have more bookshelf space in the dining room, but I don't know that I want everything to be moved in there. I'm going to keep the bookshelves that I currently have set up in here. I'm moving them to my bedroom. So I will have more bookshelf space, but I also want to have the books that I love on my shelves, not just this is all I need to read and be mostly TBR. Okay. I'm scared of this series because of the way it's written, and I've put it off for so long because of the way it's written. I have a feeling it's going to give me a massive headache, but I also have read something from this author before and loved it. Well, just this last year. It was so good. It was so fun. And I know the tone of that novel is not the tone of this series, but it's intrigued me enough that I'm like, okay, I just need to pick that up and decide. And that would be Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I read The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons this year. And it, like I said, I know that the tone is very different from The Sky on Fire to this, but I've had this for a while. I need to read it. I need to find out if it's a series that I need to own or if I need to let it go. One of the things about this is we've already talked about the fact that I'm not big on an amnesia trope. And not that there's an amnesia trope in here, but there's something very similar. And it worries me. It worries me. But we have like body hopping scenarios. That's what I know. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to read it. I'm going to find out. And we're going to go from there. There's a good chance I could DNF this book, but I need to know. That's why it's on this list. That's why I want to tackle it in 2025. And, you know, like I said, see where we go from there. And this tagline gets me. It says, "What if you weren't the hero?" We all know I love a villainous story. So that makes me excited too. Another that I'm a little scared of because I've heard things that make me think this book might not be for me, but I really want to give the author a try because they are very prevalent here on BookTube and in the Discords that I frequent, and that would be The Bloodstones by Tori Tekken. Now, I did buy this, and I was very excited to get into it because I really love a story that is centered around war and legends of war and you know, things like that. And so I really want to delve into this, but I've heard it's very character driven, and that scares me because it's rare that I like a character driven story. There are some. I will say The Pariah by Anthony Ryan is one that stands out. The Will of the Many I really enjoyed, but it's so rare. And the ones that are pushed to the level of me enjoying them hinder on the writing style. And I've never read anything by Tori Tekken, so I don't know if I'm actually going to enjoy this or not, but I really want to give it a shot and find out. One that's also been on my list for forever, but I just bought the first book myself to have it on my shelves to push me to read it, is The Lost War by Justin Lee Anderson. Now, again, I just said I like books that center around war. I like war in my fantasy novels. I love things like Wounded Kingdom by R.J. Barker, The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. Like, those are my favorites. Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. And so I really want to get into this. I've heard great things about this. I've heard the plot is absolutely fantastic and that the writing is good. And, you know, plot is something I need in my books. And so I'm very, very excited for this. There were a couple of buzzwords for me in here as well. And like I said, I'm trying to focus on my buzzwords, not what's popular. And this says demons is one of the first words used in the synopsis. War is used, mage, magic. So I'm just very, very excited to start this. I've heard from everyone that I'm going to love it. So I'm looking forward to finding out for myself. Now we're going to move on to the hardbacks, the ones that I paid a pretty penny for and still have not read. First off, we have To Cage a God by Elizabeth May. Now, Elizabeth May is an author that I have been told that I will really enjoy. But this says, to cage a god is divine. To be divine is to rule. To rule is to destroy. And that tagline is what sold me on this book. I don't know much else about it other than that. But this is not the first Elizabeth May that I have picked up. It says ancient secrets, gods, a mom at the center of the story. And those are very big buzzwords for me. And so I want to get to this one as soon as possible. Next, we have one that I picked up on a whim, and that would be Mazes of Power by Juliet Wade. The Broken Trust. Now, the buzzwords for me were competition. We have societal and classism, like those types of things in here. Then we have mythology playing into it all as well, struggles for power. And that says this is a Trinity book to me, because I love all of those things. And like I said, this is one I picked up on a whim at the buy sell trade, that the cover intrigued me at first, and then I heard competition, and then I heard gods, and then I heard myths, and then I heard struggle for power and classism, and I'm like, okay, this sounds like a book that I really, really need to read. Again, I apologize if these are not good synopses for you guys to pick them up. I'm talking about why I'm picking them up and the buzzwords that caught my attention. Now, book of the month. You'll see a couple of book of the month. I didn't put a whole lot on this list because there are certain things that I have goals with my BookBox books that are outside of this. But The Book of Witching by C.J. Cook, I really, really want to read this. I'm dying to read this. I have already got the audio on standby to immersive read. And it might be one of the first books I read because I'm in such a horror mood lately, but this is about witches. And if you guys know, my Patreon is witchy themed and I love witches. So I need to read this now. And I know it's dark, I know it's witchy, I know it's horror, and then it says a mother must fight for her daughter's life. I am a sucker for a mom, and a mom who slaps back. That's kind of my thing. I love the Maleficent 7 simply because we have a mom who slaps back. There is Sarah Beth Durst. She wrote Queen of Blood. They're up here. The Reluctant Queen. She wrote that, and it has a Mama Bear character in it. Do I have those in out of order? Maybe. I don't know. Queen of Sorrow? One of those. The second book has a Mama Bear character in it, and I absolutely loved it. You guys know Threadlight has a Mama Bear character in it, and I absolutely love that. But I love a Mama Bear character. I love it. And so I'm dying to read this. I want to read it right now. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm reading a book that probably is comparable in feminine rage. So I don't want to read them back to back, but very, very excited for this one. Okay, we talked about how I love a fairy tale retelling, and if you do it dark, I'm going to be so excited. So this one had to make the list. This is Heather Walter, The Crimson Crown. This is a Sleeping Beauty retelling? No, Snow White. Snow White retelling. I knew what I was talking about. I just didn't get there fast enough. And that's all I really need to know. A dark Snow White retelling. Snow White is dark already, just like Cinderella is dark already. So this makes me very, very excited. I am dying to read this, just like with the Book of Witching. I'm just dying to read these. I really love that Book of the Month often has books I'm excited for. And we'll talk about something else. I recently got rid of my Fairy Loot subscription. Book of the Month, however, has books that I gravitate towards quite often, and books that push me out of my comfort zone, and books that have my buzzwords in them already. So I've gotten rid of my Fairy Loot subscription because oftentimes I didn't care for the books. Oftentimes they were cozy or pushed a little too romantic-y for me, and I thought we would walk away from that when they decided to announce their romantic-y subscription. We didn't. And of the books that we've received, there have been two legitimate sci-fi, and I want to say one or two anticipated fantasy that were not romantasy. And so I kind of had to just be done with Fairy Loot. And I do plan to read the books I've got from Fairy Loot, not push them aside. However, I'm sending the two cozies to one of my best friends, Izzy, because she loves cozy fantasy and I don't. She's also a patron of mine, so since she's supported me for so long, I have no issues just sending her those and being out however much. So that is another story for another day. But I'm really loving the Book of the Month books so far. Now, one that has been on my list for a while, and I put it off for one reason. Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads had this on his Pango, and I kept waiting to have the finances to buy it. I kept waiting to be like, okay, here is the moment that I'm ready to spend the money on this. And then he was moving and dropped the prices on all of the books in his Pango, and he messaged me and he was like, okay, Trinity, here, it's your time, it's your time. And I bought The Immortality Thief by Taryn Hunt. Like I said, have been eyeballing this on Andrew's shelves for a while, and it is signed and numbered. It is the Goldsboro Special Edition. It does have the Mylar wrap on the outside, and it says, far off the edge of human existence, beside a dying star lies a nameless ship, abandoned and hidden, lost for a millennium. But there are secrets there, terrible secrets that would change the fate of humanity, and eventually someone will come looking. But we have criminals that are doing this. They've decided they'd rather serve their time searching out these secrets of the ship rather than be in prison. And we've talked about it a couple times in this video. I love rogue characters. And so this is very buzzwordy for me. First we have space opera, then we have criminals in space. Like, I need to read this so badly, so badly. And I'm very excited, very, very excited. This one again is based on the author. I read The Stardust Grail and absolutely loved it. Again, that book was very buzzwordy for me, but I wanted to read something else by Yumi Kitase because I loved their writing. And so I picked up The Deep Sky. Again, this is sci-fi. They left Earth to save humanity. They'll have to save themselves first. I really love, oh my gosh, what is it? Lost in Space? Love that show. And sometimes whenever I read a book like this, it gives me that nostalgic feeling of Lost in Space. I just love it. I love it. Also, I love this cover. Love it so much. But I wanted to read something else by Yumi Kitase, like I said, because I have read The Stardust Grail and it's going to make my top books of 2024. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about this one. Okay, this is going to seem a little backwards because I have not read anything by this author yet, and I've been meaning to, but I had an arc of this and I never listened to it because it was an ALC, and I'm like, come on, girlfriend, you need to do it. And it sounds really good. But In the Shadow of Lightning by Brian McClellan. Now, I have put books of his on my to be read many, many times and haven't done it, and I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but I love this cover. I love that magic is finite in this world, and I want to delve into that. I want to see what it looks like. I've heard this is not his best, but that also tells me that this is not a bad place to start with him. Because if I don't like it, there's better out there, and if I do like it, I'm only going to be more impressed with what else he's written. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here. This one, I feel bad. This made multiple lists of mine in 2024, and then I never got around to reading it. And I honestly don't know why, but I do think it fell into the fact that I kept trying to read more popular stuff. I kept trying to appease the algorithm on YouTube, things like that. I kept trying to read the things that other people were reading so that I had something to say about them. And this book fell to the wayside, but I think it's going to be completely up my alley, and that's The Counselor by E.J. Beaton. Now, I've heard a lot of people tell me that I'm going to really enjoy this book. I love politics, and this is heavily political, and we have a main character who has to take the place of the Queen. She's in proxy for the Queen. She's a drunk, from what I understand, but I think I'm going to really, really enjoy this. Like I said, I'm going for buzzwords this year, and this is very buzzwordy for me. A tense intrigue of unknown loyalties, political machinations, and secret magic, The Counselor explores ambition, addiction, and the consequences of power. A powerful and intelligent debut from a writer to watch. That's really all I need to know. That's all I need to know. All of those are buzzwordy things for me. Political machinations, secret magic, unknown loyalties, addiction, ambition, consequences of power. Yes. Yes. And another, I've owned this book for a while, and I just realized the third book in this series is about to release. I have the first two and have not read them, so I need to start. That is The Starless Crown by James Rollins. I have read James Rollins before, and I read his vampire series, really, really enjoyed it. And I have read, like, I think it was some kind of Indiana Jones thing. I'm not really sure what it was, but I have read from him before. That was the point I was trying to make. And I did like his writing a lot. Now there's like an epic fantasy series from him, so I'm very excited. Only thing about this is I know that one of the characters is a student, so I'm hoping it's not academic. I have an issue with academia in books sometimes, but I know I like James Rollins' writing. That's the reason this hit my radar, and that's the reason I've put it on this list. So if you guys saw, I had an issue. I had bought what I thought was the first book in Django Wexler's epic fantasy series, and it was not it. It was the second book to this series, The Steel Remains by Richard K. Morgan. And when I investigated the second book, I was like, oh, I think this is a series I need to read. This is Grimdark, and I've never heard of it. So I'm very excited. However, it's blurbed by Joe Abercrombie. So how have I not heard of this before? That's kind of my thing. I feel like if Joe Abercrombie's touched it, the rest of the Grimdark community should be all over it, right? But it says, bold, brutal, and making no compromises. Morgan doesn't so much twist the cliches of fantasy as take an axe to them, then set them on fire. So very, very intriguing for me. Along those same lines, Crown for Cold Silver has been on my list for a very long time. If you guys saw my Grimdark list, you will have seen this. My dark fantasy list, you will have seen this. And this is war, political, all the things I love about fantasy, Grimdark, and I'm very excited to get to it. I've heard from everyone who's read this that I will enjoy this, whether they liked it or not. They're very, very sure I'm going to enjoy this, and I really want to get around to reading it. Another recent addition to these stacks for me is Against All Gods by Miles Cameron. Now, if you guys have been around for a while, you will know I hated The Red Knight. I hated it. And, but that hasn't put me off to Miles Cameron altogether, because every time I hear a synopsis from Miles Cameron, I'm like, that sounds great. Or he writes under a pen name too. Or this is his pen name, I'm not really sure, but he writes historical books as well as fantasy and sci-fi. And so I kind of want to try all of the flavors of Miles Cameron, if that makes sense. But absolute power corrupts eternally. It's called Against All Gods, a powerful epic, this tale of gods, men, and monsters, conspiracy and war. I mean, come on now. All of those are buzzwords for me, as we've discussed through this whole video. And so I want to give this a shot. Am I going to love it? I don't know. But I really, really want to see if I will like anything from Miles Cameron, because I was told I would like The Red Knight, and that just didn't happen. Okay, we are on our final book of the books I want to read in 2025, and this one I have read and absolutely loved. A trilogy from this author before. I know that they go a little bit dark. And if you guys don't know, I have written a polyamorous story. It is very well received in the community that I wrote it for. And when I read a polyamorous story, I'm almost immediately put off by some of the things that I have read in previous books that I've read. But I've heard this one is done well, and that is Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Shepeko. I love vampires as well. So polyamory, vampires, I kind of just don't need to know anything more. I have heard this compared to Howl's Moving Castle though, and I've also heard that's just not true. And so I don't know what to believe on that front. But you know, when people put out comps for their books, everything is compared to Game of Thrones, things like that. I kind of don't believe the comps is where I'm going with that. But I do want to get around to reading this particular book for those reasons that I said. Vampires, polyamory, Rin Shepeko. All right, that is it for my video today. Please tell me if you've read any of these and loved them, if you've read any of these and hated them, and let me know what you think about these 25 books, because this is quite the stack. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.